Folks, we're continuing our conversation with CEO Brian Gitt from Build It Green. Welcome back, Brian.
Thanks. I'm glad to be back.
Well, Brian, I want to continue on your point on rainwater and water recapturing in general, and I'll sort of frame this in 2 points. One, is it possible to literally capture the rainwater and recycle it in somehow for irrigation purposes, as an example? And then second, if you could resolve a marital dispute. I am currently looking at landscaping the front yard. We've torn out the lawn. What I'd like to do is put plastic sheets down and then put rocks on top. No weeds, no fuss, nothing to mow on the weekends. Rose, on the other hand, would like to have the rocks down but no plastic sheets, which means the weeds will come up. And her concern is that rainwater will simply run off from the front yard down to the gutter and so on and so forth. So take it away. Recycling rainwater and Dr. Phil.
Well, we'll first tackle the rainwater catchment issue and then do marital settlement here.
Okay.
So in terms of rainwater collection, it is a long utilized strategy. Many cultures throughout, almost since going back to human time, have always collected rainwater. And today, in industrialized nations such as Australia, roof water catchment is very common. It's rare not to see harvesting that water off the roof, because that's really usually very clean, fresh water that we can utilize for irrigation, and in some cases even use to do things like flush toilets and all that kind of stuff.
Really?
However, it's really climate dependent and when it makes cost-effective sense. And when I say that, it's because in a climate where it rains often and you don't have a long dry season, then you don't need a huge storage capacity for it. So you don't need a huge cistern that's going to cost a lot of money to bury under the ground, or if it's above ground, it's going to be unsightly, that kind of thing. So the issue in California is that because we have a long time between when it really rains, we have such a long dry season here.
True.
You have to have a very large cistern or some type of water storage, which means that it doesn't necessarily always pencil out from a cost-effective standpoint. Now that said, there are many places around the U.S. where it does make sense and you should utilize water catchment, and it's a great way to harvest that water and reduce the taxing on our water supply. And so it's not to say that I don't think you can't, you certainly can do it, and many people do it, but in terms of a widely adopted strategy to address our water issues in California, because of our climate and the duration between the rains, it probably is not the most effective. There's a ton we can do though on water efficiency. We were talking before the break about outdoor landscapes, and that kind of gets into your question of, well, what do you do with your front yard? And turf or grass is something that a lot of people like, and it's kind of the white picket fence and the lawn, and that's kind of the American dream, and that's what people in their mind idealize. And turf can be great for certain things. I mean, kids playing. It's great to have a little bit of turf and for the kids to go out in the yard and play. And we're not anti-turf, but there's a way to do it smart. There's no reason to have a whole lawn full of turf if it's not actually being utilized for that. Number one, there's a lot more beautiful options out there. There's so many drought-tolerant and native plants that really look beautiful, that are green and colorful. And you were talking about the rocks and and some kind of sheeting. Yeah.
Plastic sheets and rocks.
Plastic sheets and rocks. And certainly, I think it really comes down to your design aesthetic, what you like, what do you want to see in your yard, because there's strategies that you can employ to reduce the weeds and not have the weed issue or be out there pulling them every Saturday morning. The thing that prevents weeds is blocking sunlight. You don't have to use a bunch of toxic chemicals. It's the main thing is what germinates those weed seeds is sunlight. And so, if
plastic sheeting would block the weed seeds.
It will. And plastic sheeting is effective at suppressing weeds, but there's also a lot of other alternatives as well. Even things like sheet mulching, which is taking, for example, cardboard and newspaper, putting it out of a layer and then covering that with your mulch or your plantings. You don't see it. You're not seeing visually the cardboard or newspaper. That basically will block the sun so that the weed seeds don't germinate. It'll disrupt their cycle, and then the cardboard and newspaper eventually decomposes and goes back to create a more nutrient-rich soil. And so has been used as a very effective strategy so that your plantings can then take root, and then they're helping to shade the area as well.
But still, in terms of the rocks, then, what should be underneath? Plastic sheeting, or Rose is of the opinion nothing?
Well, it's
the rocks would block the sun, true, but
well, they don't.
The sun is going to get through.
Yeah, but see, exactly. You need a cohesive layer that doesn't have any breaks. Now, you don't have to use plastic. There's a lot of weed suppressing fabrics and fibers that are utilized that do allow for water to penetrate in and still suppress the weeds. So there's alternatives to plastic that can achieve the same thing.
So Rose is right, huh?
Well,
okay. Next question.
You're both right. In essence, you do need something under the rocks so that you're not spending your Saturday mornings picking weeds.
That's amazing.
But there are alternatives to plastic, and there's just strategies you can incorporate to reduce that.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Phil or Dr. Phil. Let's dive into the question of finance, and I'll just pick on solar panels as an example. Solar panels, great idea. You put them up, you see your meter spin backwards. PG&E buys your electricity, your bill goes down to 60 cents a month, what have you. The issue that people bring up, and I think is a valid one, is that the payback period is 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at, I think they're called photovoltaic cells on top of our house, and as near as I can figure, we're probably looking at $20,000.
Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's a 10-year payback period. Two questions for you. Is that common? Does green cost more, and does it take longer for green to break even? I mean, it's something people have to weigh in as they look at a budget.
Mm-hmm. Great question. So I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
Green does not have to cost more. It can cost more, just like anything can cost more. You can design a home with granite countertops and very elaborate fixtures and very high-end stuff. And obviously that's going to cost more than putting in Formica and everything else. So we have to compare apples to apples when we're talking cost. And what often happens is that sometimes with, especially interior finishes, let's say like green countertops or tile and things like that, people are comparing very high-end finishes, such as recycled glass concrete countertops, and they're comparing that to the price of Formica or something like that versus comparing it to granite, when it's more comparable. But the bottom line is green does not have to cost more. Mm-hmm. It is a solid financial investment and will reduce the cost of home ownership over time and save you money. Sometimes there is a upfront capital investment because what you're investing in is quality. Exactly. And you got to choose wisely. There are green materials that cost more, and there's those that cost less, and there's some that are cost neutral. And so it's about being smart. It's about prioritizing both from an aesthetic point of view as well as where do you get the biggest bang for your buck in that house. And what's most important to you? Is it indoor air quality? Is it energy savings? Is it water savings? Really focusing on what your values as a consumer are, and then selecting products, materials, and technologies that are aligned with that in a smart way. Because ideally, you wouldn't pay a penny more upfront, and you would reduce your cost of home ownership over time. And how does that work? Well, it works through reduced utility bills. Not giving PG&E your money every month. Exactly. It has to do with reduced maintenance costs, because green materials are quality, durable materials that'll last. So instead of ripping out your flooring after 5 years because it's all scuffed up and marked, and you don't have to, because your flooring is going to last 20 years or 30 years. Instead of replacing that deck that's starting to rot, and all the costs associated with ripping that out and paying someone to build a new deck for you, your deck, because you chose wisely in your material selection, is going to last for 20 or 30 years. So it's all about prioritization and being smart with your money. And green does not have to cost more, and really it's a really solid conservative financial investment because the return on investment is there. When you do spend a little bit more on quality, you're going to get that back many times over. The issue of solar panels is a good one because there's a lot of ways to crack that nut. So one is, let's say you have to, there is an upfront capital investment to put solar on your roof. Now, what if you wrap that $20,000 into the cost of your mortgage? You just added that onto your mortgage in terms of financing that money. The difference between the savings you would have on a monthly basis that you're now not paying to PG&E and the additional cost that's added onto your mortgage, you might be cash flow positive in month one if it's financed correctly. So it's all about the financing and working the numbers. You need to be conservative. You need to think this through. Don't just put solar on because it sounds like a good idea. You need to crunch the numbers and look at the scenario. But there's a way you could put solar on and actually have no money out of pocket and be, if cost neutral or saving money for month one.